Marcus Chun stared at the tiny figure standing in his doorway, wondering if the stress of his new job at the intergalactic trade station had finally driven him to hallucinations. The creature barely reached his knee, with pale blue skin that seemed to shimmer in the artificial lighting of his quarters. Her oversized eyes, dark as deep space, gazed up at him with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. "I'm sorry, what did you say?" Marcus asked, crouching down to her level. The translation device in his ear had to be malfunctioning. The alien girl straightened her tiny shoulders, her voice carrying a formal tone that seemed oddly mature for her childlike appearance. According to Galactic Regulation 847.2, all sentient species entering the cooperative must participate in a mandatory partnership protocol. Humans have been classified as a compatible species. I am Zix Cattell of the Vorthack Collective, and I have been matched with you, Marcus Chun of Earth. Marcus rubbed his temples, feeling a headache building behind his eyes. 3 months ago, he had been a simple cargo pilot running supplies between Earth colonies. Then humanity had made first contact with the Galactic Cooperative, and suddenly everyone with a clean record and basic education was being recruited for diplomatic missions. The pay was incredible, the opportunity historic, but nobody had mentioned anything about mandatory partnerships. "Look, Zix, I'm sorry, what should I call you?" he asked, still trying to process what was happening. "Zix is sufficient," she replied, stepping uninvited into his quarters. Despite her small size, she moved with a confidence that commanded attention. "I understand this may be confusing for your species. Humans are remarkably primitive in their understanding of proper social protocols." Marcus felt his jaw clench at the casual insult. Primitive? Zix seemed oblivious to his irritation as she examined his living space with obvious disapproval. "Your quarters are arranged inefficiently. The sleeping area should be elevated for optimal security positioning, and you have no proper meditation sphere. How do you achieve mental clarity without a meditation sphere?" We don't use meditation spheres on Earth," Marcus said slowly, watching as the tiny alien began rearranging his furniture with surprising strength. A chair that weighed at least 50 pounds slid across the floor as if it were made of paper. "Fascinating," Zix muttered, more to herself than to him. The biological assessments indicated humans possessed above-average physical capabilities, but the psychological profiles suggested significant deficiencies in logical reasoning and emotional regulation. This partnership will require extensive adaptation protocols. Marcus stood up, his patience finally snapping. "Hold on. I never agreed to any partnership. I'm here to help establish trade relations, not to babysit some alien who thinks my entire species is deficient." Zix froze in the middle of rearranging his bookshelf, her large eyes turning to focus on him with laser-like intensity. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. "Babysit," she repeated, her voice carrying a dangerous edge that made Marcus suddenly aware of how little he knew about this creature's capabilities. "Human, I am 127 standard years old. I hold advanced degrees in xenobiology, quantum mechanics, and strategic warfare. My species has conquered 3-star systems and established peaceful relations with 47 different civilizations. What exactly do you think you could teach me?" Marcus felt heat rise to his cheeks. The translator must have conveyed his thoughts more literally than he intended. "I didn't mean you just look so young, and this whole partnership thing came out of nowhere." Zix's expression softened slightly, though her posture remained rigid. Physical development varies significantly between species. Vorthack individuals maintain what you might consider a juvenile appearance throughout most of our lifespan. We find it advantageous in negotiations and infiltration scenarios. "Infiltration scenarios?" Marcus asked, but Zix had already moved on, pulling out a small device that projected a holographic display into the air between them. "The partnership protocol was established 3,000 years ago after the Great Misunderstanding Wars," she explained, manipulating the hologram to show what looked like a galaxy-wide conflict. "When species first encounter the cooperative, cultural and biological differences often lead to catastrophic conflicts. The protocol ensures that each new member species is paired with an experienced guide to facilitate proper integration. Marcus studied the holographic display, watching as red zones of conflict gradually transformed into peaceful blue regions. "So you're like a cultural ambassador?" Among other things, Zix replied cryptically. The success rate for species that complete the partnership protocol is 98.7%. Species that refuse the protocol have a 15% survival rate within the first decade of contact. The implications of that statistic hit Marcus like a physical blow. "You're saying that if humanity doesn't go along with this, we'll probably be wiped out?" Zix deactivated the hologram and tucked the device away in what appeared to be a fold in her skin. "Not by the cooperative. We are a peaceful alliance. But the galaxy is vast and contains many threats that young civilizations are unprepared to face. The Zephyrian Empire, for instance, has a particular fondness for enslaving species they deem aesthetically pleasing. Humans would likely fit their criteria quite well." Marcus sank into his chair, the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. He had thought this assignment was about establishing trade agreements and cultural exchange programs. Nobody had told him that humanity's survival might depend on how well he got along with his new alien roommate. "Why me specifically?" he asked. "I'm nobody special. Just a cargo pilot who happened to test well on the aptitude exams." Zix tilted her head, studying him with those unsettling dark eyes. "The matching algorithm is quite sophisticated. It analyzes psychological profiles, biological compatibility, stress responses, and hundreds of other factors. According to the data, we are 94.7% compatible." Compatible for what exactly? For the first time since she had arrived, Zix seemed uncertain. She fidgeted with something that might have been jewelry around her neck before responding. "The protocol requires partners to share living space, collaborate on assigned missions, and provide mutual support for a minimum period of 1 standard year. During this time, the human partner learns to navigate cooperative society, while the guide gains insight into the new species' capabilities and potential contributions." Marcus noticed she had avoided directly answering his question, but before he could press for clarification, his communication panel chimed with an incoming message. The holographic display showed Administrator Holloway, the human representative who had briefed him before his departure from Earth. "Chun, I hope you're settling in well," Holloway's image said. "I'm sure you've met your assigned partner by now. Just wanted to remind you that the success of this mission is critical for humanity's future in the cooperative. The evaluation period begins immediately, so make sure you demonstrate our species' best qualities. Earth is counting on you." The message ended, leaving Marcus staring at the empty space where Holloway's image had been. The weight of expectation felt crushing. Not only did he have to figure out how to work with this enigmatic alien, but apparently the future of his entire species hung in the balance. "No pressure," he muttered. Zix had been quiet during the message, but now she stepped closer to his chair. Despite her small size, her presence seemed to fill the room. "The administrator speaks truthfully. The evaluation period is critical. However, you should know that the assessment measures both partners. My own standing within the collective depends on this mission's success." Marcus looked down at her, surprised by this admission. "So we're both being tested?" "Indeed. Failed partnerships reflect poorly on both participants." Zix moved to the window, gazing out at the sprawling structure of the trade station. Hundreds of different species moved through the corridors visible from their quarters, a kaleidoscope of shapes, sizes, and colors that still amazed Marcus every time he saw it. "What happens if we fail?" he asked. Zix was quiet for so long that Marcus wondered if she had heard the question. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "For humans, probably nothing permanent. Your species would be classified as incompatible and granted limited trading rights. For me," she trailed off, leaving the sentence unfinished. Marcus felt an unexpected surge of protectiveness. Despite her confidence and obvious intelligence, There was something vulnerable about the way Zix stood silhouetted against the vast starfield outside their window. "What would happen to you?" "The Vorthat Collective does not tolerate failure," she said simply. "Individuals who cannot fulfill their assigned functions are reassigned to more suitable roles." The euphemism sent a chill down Marcus's spine. He was beginning to understand that this partnership was about much more than cultural exchange. Both of their futures, and possibly the future of humanity itself, depended on making this work. "All right," Marcus said, standing up and moving to join her at the window. "If we're stuck together, we might as well make the best of it. What I need to know about cooperative society." Zix turned to look at him, and for the first time, something that might have been relief flickered across her features. "The first lesson is simple. Never assume you understand another species based on appearance or initial behavior. The galaxy is full of creatures who are far more than they seem." As Marcus looked down at his tiny partner, with her childlike appearance and ancient eyes, he suspected that lesson applied to her as much as anyone else in the cooperative. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he was beginning to realize that Zix might be just as much of an unknown quantity as he was. The soft chime of the station's evening cycle echoed through their quarters, signaling the end of their first day together. Tomorrow, Zix had explained, their real work would begin. Marcus found himself both dreading and anticipating what that might involve. "One more question," Marcus said as Zix began setting up what appeared to be a sleeping area in the corner of the room. That 94.7% compatibility rating the algorithm calculated. "What exactly does that mean?" Zix paused in her preparations, and Marcus could swear he saw her cheeks darken to a deeper shade of blue. "Perhaps that is a conversation better suited for when we know each other better," she said carefully. As Marcus settled into his own sleeping area, he couldn't shake the feeling that there was much more to this partnership protocol than either of them was ready to discuss. But one thing was certain, his simple cargo hauling days were definitely over. Marcus woke to the sound of what could only be described as aggressive humming. The melody was complex and alien, with harmonics that seemed to resonate in his bones. He found Zix in the small kitchen area, preparing what looked like a chemical experiment rather than breakfast. "Good morning," he said cautiously, eyeing the bubbling purple mixture in the synthesizer. "Nutritional period alpha," Zix corrected without looking up. "Time is measured differently here than on your homeworld. The station operates on a 31-hour cycle to accommodate multiple species' biological rhythms." Marcus rubbed his eyes, still adjusting to the artificial lighting that never quite felt like real sunlight. "What are you making?" "Sustenance appropriate for both our metabolisms," Zix replied, adding a measure of something that sparkled like crushed diamonds to the mixture. "Standard station rations are nutritionally adequate, but lack the trace minerals your species requires for optimal brain function. Given the challenges we'll face today, cognitive enhancement is advisable." "Challenges?" Marcus accepted the bowl she handed him, sniffing cautiously at the contents. It smelled like cinnamon and ozone. Zix finally turned to face him, and Marcus was surprised to see what looked like worry in her large eyes. "Our first joint assignment. We're to mediate a trade dispute between the Krillian Mining Consortium and the Ethereal Collective. It's complicated." Marcus nearly choked on his first spoonful of the alien breakfast. Despite its strange appearance, it tasted remarkably like the protein bars he used to eat during long cargo runs, but with a warmth that seemed to spread through his entire body. "Mediate? I don't know anything about mediation. I'm a pilot, not a diplomat. The partnership protocol requires us to work together on progressively challenging assignments," Zix explained, her own bowl apparently containing something that looked like moving liquid metal. "This particular dispute has been ongoing for 6 months. 3 previous mediation attempts have failed." Marcus felt his stomach drop. "And they're giving it to us?" "The new guy and his partner who's probably being tested just as much as I am." Zix's expression darkened. "The assignment is not random. Administrator Vexhai specifically requested our involvement." She paused, seeming to wrestle with whether to continue. "Vexhai opposed my assignment to the Human Integration Program. She believes my species is too aggressive for successful partnership with yours. Aggressive? Marcus looked at the tiny creature sitting across from him, finding it hard to imagine her being threatening to anyone. The Vorthack reputation in the cooperative is somewhat complicated, Zix admitted. We are valued for our strategic capabilities and technological expertise, but many species find us difficult to work with. We have strong opinions about efficiency and logical decision-making. Marcus was beginning to understand the politics at play. This wasn't just about testing human-alien compatibility. Someone was actively trying to prove that Zix's species wasn't suitable for partnership roles. What happens if we succeed where the other mediators failed? It would demonstrate that the human-Vorthack partnership model has merit, Zix said carefully. It would also be highly embarrassing for Administrator Vex High, who publicly predicted our failure. Marcus finished his breakfast, feeling the strange warmth continuing to spread through his system. His mind felt clearer than it had in weeks, and he was beginning to understand why Zix had enhanced their nutrition. Tell me about this trade dispute. What exactly are we walking into? Zix activated her holographic projector, filling the space between them with a complex 3D model of what appeared to be an asteroid field. The Krillian Consortium has mining rights to the Xeris Belt, specifically for harvesting quantum crystals. The Ethereal Collective claims that the mining operations are disrupting sacred sites where their ancestors' consciousness patterns are stored. Marcus studied the display, noting the highlighted areas of conflict. So we have a business dispute versus religious concerns. That doesn't sound impossible to resolve. The complexity lies in the species involved, Zix continued, manipulating the display to show images of the disputing parties. The Krillians appeared to be massive, rock-like beings with multiple arms ending in what looked like industrial equipment. The ethereals were nearly transparent, flowing creatures that seemed to shift between solid and gaseous states. The Krillians communicate primarily through vibrations transmitted through solid matter, Zix explained. They have difficulty understanding concepts that cannot be quantified in physical terms. The ethereals exist partially in dimensions beyond normal space-time and consider material concerns to be irrelevant compared to spiritual obligations. Marcus stared at the images, feeling completely out of his depth. How are we supposed to mediate between rocks and ghosts? By finding common ground that neither previous mediation team considered, Zix said, deactivating the display. The first team focused on legal precedents and failed because ethereal society doesn't recognize legal frameworks as humans understand them. The second team tried to establish a spiritual compromise and failed because Krillians cannot perceive non-physical concepts. And the third team, Zix's expression became grim. They attempted to use force to impose a solution. The result was diplomatically catastrophic. Both species now refuse to work with the mediation teams from those representatives' homeworlds. Marcus felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders again. Not only were they trying to solve an apparently impossible problem, but failure might damage humanity's reputation permanently. Do you have a plan? The beginnings of one, Zix admitted, but it will require your species' particular talents. Before Marcus could ask what she meant, their communication panel chimed with an urgent priority message. The holographic display showed a cooperative official he didn't recognize, with features that seemed to shift between reptilian and crystalline. Partnership Team Chinzix, you are required to report to Mediation Chamber 7 immediately. The disputing parties have agreed to one final mediation attempt. Failure to achieve resolution will result in the matter being referred to the Enforcement Division. The message ended abruptly, leaving Marcus and Zix staring at each other. Enforcement Division? Marcus asked. Military intervention, Zix translated grimly. If we fail, the cooperative will likely seize the mining rights and ban both species from the region. The economic impact will be severe for both civilizations. Marcus stood up, decision crystallizing in his mind. Then, we don't fail. What do you need me to do? For the first time since they had met, Zix smiled. It was a small expression, barely visible on her alien features, but it transformed her entire face. "Be human," she said simply. The journey to Mediation Chamber 7 took them through sections of the station Marcus had never seen before. The corridors here were wider and higher, designed to accommodate the massive variety of species that used the facility. They passed creatures that defied easy description, beings made of living crystal, entities that seemed to exist as coherent energy patterns, and things that looked like they belonged in the deepest parts of Earth's oceans. "Remember," Zix said quietly as they approached the chamber entrance, "do not attempt to shake hands or make physical contact with either species. Krillians consider unsolicited touch to be a declaration of war. Ethereals exist partially outside normal space-time, so physical contact can cause temporal displacement effects." "Temporal displacement?" Marcus asked, but they had reached the chamber entrance. The mediation room was enormous, with a ceiling that stretched up into darkness. One side of the chamber was filled with a substance that looked like flowing granite, from which several massive Krillian forms emerged. Their bodies were living geology, with veins of metals running through stone skin and eyes that glowed like molten ore. The other side of the chamber seemed empty at first, until Marcus noticed the subtle distortions in the air that marked the presence of the ethereal delegation. Occasionally, he caught glimpses of flowing, translucent forms that seemed to phase in and out of visibility. "Welcome," said a voice that seemed to come from the stone floor itself. "We are the Krillian delegation." The rock speakers grow impatient with these useless discussions. Another voice, this one seeming to whisper from everywhere and nowhere at once, added, "The consecrated sites suffer continued violation. The ancestor patterns fade with each passing moment of delay." Zix stepped forward, her small form dwarfed by the cosmic scale of the chamber and its inhabitants. "We are Partnership Team Chun Zix, assigned to facilitate resolution of this dispute. We propose a new approach to this matter." Marcus watched as both delegations seemed to focus their attention on them. The weight of alien scrutiny was almost physically oppressive, and he understood why previous mediation teams had struggled. How could anyone find common ground between species that barely existed in the same reality? Then Zix did something unexpected. She pulled out her holographic projector and began displaying the asteroid belt model, but this time with additional information Marcus hadn't seen before. The display showed energy patterns flowing through the asteroid field in complex, beautiful geometries. "Both species value patterns," Zix said, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber. "Krillians seek quantum crystals because they represent perfect mathematical structures. Ethereals protect ancestor sites because they preserve pattern memories of their civilization's history." Marcus began to understand where she was going with this, but he wasn't sure how he was supposed to help. "The current conflict exists because both species assume their pattern requirements are incompatible," Zix continued. "However, human mathematical analysis suggests a solution that previous mediation teams have overlooked." She gestured toward Marcus, who felt a moment of panic. He was a cargo pilot, not a mathematician. But then he remembered her words, "Be human." Marcus stepped forward, studying the holographic display with what he hoped looked like professional interest. "The patterns you're both trying to preserve, they're not actually in conflict. They're complementary." He pointed to the areas where the Krillian mining operations intersected with the ethereal sacred sites. If you look at the quantum resonance frequencies, the mining activity is actually amplifying the ancestor pattern storage capacity of the sacred sites. Both delegations seemed to focus more intently on the display. Marcus had no idea if what he was saying made any scientific sense, but he pressed on, trusting that Zix wouldn't have put him in this position without a reason. "The quantum crystal formation process creates harmonic vibrations that stabilize the dimensional, phasing the ethereals used to store consciousness patterns." Marcus continued, warming to the theme. "Instead of destroying the sacred sites, the mining operations could be modified to enhance them." The chamber fell silent, except for the subtle harmonic resonances of the station systems. Marcus held his breath, wondering if he had just solved an impossible problem or made everything worse. Then, the Krillian speaker's voice rumbled through the floor. The pattern logic has merit. The harmonic enhancement concept requires investigation. The ethereal voice whispered from the air around them. The possibility of pattern strengthening deserves consideration. The ancestor memories could become more persistent. Zix stepped forward again, her holographic display shifting to show detailed technical specifications. Partnership Team Chun Zix proposes a joint research initiative. Krillian mining expertise combined with ethereal dimensional technology could revolutionize both quantum extraction and consciousness preservation techniques. Marcus watched in amazement as the two impossible-to-reconcile species began what appeared to be an actual negotiation. Technical specifications flowed between them, with Zix serving as translator for concepts that didn't naturally exist in both realities. 3 hours later, they walked out of the mediation chamber with a signed agreement that not only resolved the original dispute, but established the framework for a new type of cross-dimensional mining operation that both species were eager to develop. "How did you know that would work?" Marcus asked as they made their way back through the station corridors. Zix was quiet for a moment before responding. "I didn't, but I observed something during our first day together that gave me the idea." "What?" "When you rearranged your quarters after I had organized them according to Vorthack efficiency protocols," Zix said, "you didn't reject my changes or try to restore the original layout. Instead, you found a way to incorporate my organizational system while maintaining the elements that were important to you. You created something that was better than either approach alone." Marcus thought about that as they reached their quarters. Is that what humans do? Find ways to make incompatible things work together. "It appears to be one of your species' particular talents," Zix replied. "The partnership protocol matching algorithm identified this trait as your primary strength." As they entered their shared living space, Marcus found himself looking at their odd partnership with new eyes. Maybe the matching algorithm had known what it was doing after all. "So what happens now?" Marcus asked. Zix settled into her meditation area, but for the first time, she seemed relaxed rather than rigidly formal. "Now we await our next assignment. Administrator Vexhai will be displeased by today's success. I suspect she will escalate the difficulty of our challenges." Marcus felt a grin spreading across his face. "Bring it on. I'm starting to like this partnership thing." As if summoned by his words, their communication panel chimed with another priority message. Marcus and Zix exchanged glances, both thinking the same thing. What impossible problem would they be expected to solve next? But when they activated the message, it wasn't another assignment. Instead, Administrator Holloway's image appeared, his face beaming with pride and relief. "Chun, I just received word about the Krillian Ethereal resolution. Outstanding work. Earth Central is extremely pleased with the progress you're making. Keep this up, and humanity's full membership in the cooperative is practically guaranteed." The message ended, leaving Marcus and Zix alone with the implications of their success. They had passed their first real test, but Marcus was beginning to understand that it was just the beginning. "Zix," he said thoughtfully, "that 94.7% compatibility rating. I think I'm starting to understand what it means." Zix looked up at him, and Marcus caught something in her expression that might have been relief mixed with something else he couldn't quite identify. "Perhaps," she said quietly, "it means we are both more than we seemed when we first met." Outside their window, the vast expanse of space stretched endlessly, filled with challenges and opportunities neither of them could yet imagine. But for the first time since arriving at the station, Marcus felt truly optimistic about the future. The attack came without warning during the station's sleep cycle. Marcus jolted awake to the sound of emergency alarms and the violent shuddering of the entire structure. Red emergency lighting bathed their quarters in an ominous glow as automated systems announced the crisis. Hull breach in sectors 12 through 17. All personnel evacuate to emergency stations. This is not a drill. Marcus rolled out of his sleeping area, adrenaline surging through his system. Zix, what's happening? But Zix's meditation corner was empty. Marcus felt a spike of panic until he spotted her at the window, her small form silhouetted against the chaos outside. Through the transparent aluminum, he could see ships unlike anything in the cooperative fleet. They were sleek, predatory things that seemed to drink in light rather than reflect it. Zephyrian raiders, Zix said without turning around. Her voice carried a cold fury that Marcus had never heard before. 3 heavy assault vessels and at least a dozen fighters. Marcus joined her at the window, watching as the station's defensive systems engaged the attackers. Energy beams lanced through space, but the enemy ships moved with impossible agility, their dark hulls seeming to bend light around them. I thought the station's defenses were impregnable, Marcus said, ducking instinctively as one of the raiders' ships swooped close to their section. Against conventional attacks, yes, Zix replied, but the Zephyrians use quantum disruption weapons. They can phase their attacks through standard defensive shields. She turned away from the window, her large eyes reflecting the emergency lighting like mirrors. We need to reach the evacuation pods. But as they moved toward the door, their communication panel activated with an emergency override. Instead of evacuation instructions, a face appeared that made Zix freeze in recognition. It was another Vorthack, but where Zix's features were delicate and youthful, this one's were harsh and angular, marked by scars that seemed to tell stories of violence. "Little sister," the scarred Vorthack said, and, despite the translation, Marcus could hear venom in the words. "How convenient to find you here. The Zephyrian Empire has decided to test the Cooperative's new human pets. We have been hired to evaluate their worthiness." Zix's skin shifted to a darker blue, and Marcus realized he was seeing her true emotional state for the first time. "Keksmur, I should have known the exile fleet was involved." The scarred alien smile was sharp and predatory. The collective finally found a use for their most disappointing daughter. Playing nursemaid to primitives suits you perfectly. Marcus felt anger surge through him at the casual insult to humanity, but before he could respond, Zix stepped forward. Her small form seemed to radiate a dangerous intensity that transformed the air around her. "If you wish to test human worthiness, brother, you are welcome to try," she said, her voice carrying harmonics that made Marcus's bones ache. "But know that they are under my protection, and I am no longer the helpless youngling you remember." Keksmore's expression shifted to something that might have been surprise. "Protecting aliens over your own blood? The exile fleet was right to cast you out, Zixcatel. You have become truly pathetic." The communication ended abruptly, leaving Marcus and Zix alone with the continuing sounds of battle outside. Marcus had a dozen questions, but the most urgent one burst out first. "Exile fleet? Cast out? Zix, what aren't you telling me?" Zix was already moving to a section of the wall that Marcus had assumed was decorative. Her hands moved in a complex pattern, and suddenly a hidden panel opened, revealing equipment that definitely hadn't been in their quarters when they arrived. "My assignment to the partnership protocol was not entirely voluntary," Zix admitted, pulling out what looked like armor design for someone her size. 3 years ago, I was exiled from the Vorthack Collective for challenging the traditional authority structures. Marcus watched in amazement as she began donning the armor with practiced efficiency. The materials seemed to respond to her touch, flowing like liquid before hardening into protective plates. "Your political exile?" "Among other things," Zix replied, testing what appeared to be built-in weapon systems. "The Vorthack Military Command operates under strict hierarchical principles. When I was assigned to lead a planetary pacification operation, I refused to carry out orders that would have resulted in civilian casualties." The station shuddered again, and Marcus could hear the sound of hull plating being torn away somewhere nearby. "So they exiled you for having a conscience." Zix paused in her preparations, looking up at him with something that might have been gratitude. The official term was failure to maintain proper command discipline. "The collective offered me a choice: accept exile or face execution for disobedience. Marcus felt pieces of the puzzle clicking together, and the partnership protocol was your exile assignment. Keep the dangerous rebel busy by pairing her with a new species. Essentially correct, Zix confirmed, though I suspect the matching algorithm did identify genuine compatibility factors. She finished with her equipment and moved to another hidden panel, revealing a second set of armor. This appears to be sized for human physiology. Marcus stared at the equipment in shock. You knew this might happen. You've been preparing for a fight. The possibility of Zephyr interference was always present, Zix admitted. Your species' integration threatens several existing power structures. There are those who would prefer humanity to fail catastrophically. She held up the armor. The question is whether you trust me enough to fight beside me. Outside, the sounds of battle were growing closer. Marcus could hear the distinctive whine of energy weapons and the deeper rumble of hull breaches. The evacuation announcements had stopped, which probably meant the command center had been compromised. Marcus took the armor from Zix's hands, feeling its surprising lightness. What exactly are we fighting for? The station? The cooperative? For the right to prove that partnerships based on mutual respect are stronger than hierarchies based on fear, Zix replied. And for the future your species deserves to choose for themselves. The armor responded to Marcus's touch the same way it had for Zix, flowing over his body and sealing automatically. Built-in displays activated in his peripheral vision, showing him the station's layout and the positions of both friendly and hostile forces. The information flow was overwhelming at first, but somehow his enhanced mind seemed able to process it all. The breakfast formula, Marcus realized. You've been preparing me for this. Enhanced neural processing, improved reaction times, and optimized cardiovascular performance, Zix confirmed. Though I had hoped we would have more time before these enhancements were needed. A new sound echoed through their quarters, the distinctive hum of cutting equipment. Someone was forcing their way through their door. Zix moved with fluid grace to a position that would give her a clear field of fire, her armor's weapons systems charging with an ominous whine. Marcus, what I am about to show you will likely change how you view my species. We are not the peaceful scholars we pretend to be within the cooperative. I figured that out when you mentioned the planetary pacification operations, Marcus replied, taking position on the opposite side of the room. The armor's targeting systems highlighted potential threat vectors and suggested tactical positions. What I need to know about Zephyrian combat doctrine. They rely on fear and intimidation to break enemy morale before engaging in direct combat, Zix explained. Their preferred tactic is to capture high-value targets alive for public execution. If they take either of us prisoner, they will use us to demoralize both our species. The cutting sound stopped, replaced by an ominous silence. Marcus could feel his heart pounding, but the armor's systems were somehow regulating his body chemistry, keeping panic at bay while maintaining peak alertness. Then, the door exploded inward in a shower of molten metal and smoke. The creatures that poured through barely looked like living beings at first. They were tall and angular, wrapped in armor that seemed to absorb light and sound. Their movements were predatory and perfectly coordinated, like a pack of mechanical wolves. Zix opened fire without warning, her weapons producing beams of coherent energy that struck the lead Zephyrian with devastating effect. But, instead of falling, the creature's armor seemed to disperse the energy harmlessly. Adaptive shielding, Zix called out, already adjusting her weapon's frequency. Cycle through energy types until you find their harmonic weakness. Marcus's armor provided him with weapon controls that felt surprisingly intuitive. His first shots went wide, but the targeting system learned from each attempt, improving his accuracy within human speed. By his fifth shot, he was hitting consistently. The battle that followed was unlike anything Marcus could have imagined. The Zephyrians moved with inhuman grace, their weapons firing bursts of what looked like crystallized darkness. But Zix fought like a force of nature unleashed, her small form dancing between enemy attacks while delivering precise, devastating counterstrikes. "Behind you," Marcus called out, spotting a Zephyrian attempting to flank Zix's position. She spun and fired in one fluid motion, her shot perfectly placed to penetrate a gap in the enemy's armor. The creature collapsed, its form beginning to dissolve into component atoms. "Disintegration fields," Zix explained, continuing to fire at the remaining attackers. "Zephyrian biology is artificially enhanced. Remove the technological support, and they cannot maintain physical coherence." Marcus found himself falling into a rhythm with his partner, their movements complementing each other in ways that felt almost choreographed. When Zix advanced, he provided covering fire. When she needed to reload her weapons, he drew enemy attention. It was like they had been fighting together for years instead of knowing each other for less than a week. The last Zephyrian fell just as reinforcements arrived, but these were cooperative security forces. Marcus lowered his weapons, adrenaline still surging through his system. Primary assault repelled. Came the announcement through the station's communication system. All boarding parties neutralized. Station security status, green. Marcus slumped against the wall, suddenly aware of how exhausted he felt. The armor support systems had pushed his body far beyond its normal limits. "Is it over?" Zix was studying readouts from her equipment, her expression grim. This was a probing attack. The main Zephyrian fleet is still out there, and now they know the station's defensive capabilities. Before Marcus could respond, their communication panel activated again. This time, it was Administrator Vex High, the cooperative official who had been opposing Zix's partnership assignment. Her reptilian crystalline features showed clear displeasure. "Partnership Team Shinzix, you will report for immediate debriefing," she said coldly. "Questions have been raised about the coincidental timing of this attack and your presence on the station." The implication was clear. They were being blamed for bringing the attack down on the station. "With respect, Administrator," Marcus replied before Zix could speak, "we just helped defend this station against hostile forces." "I'm not sure why that would be considered suspicious." Vexai's expression became even more hostile. "The Zephyrians specifically targeted the Human Integration Program facilities. They knew exactly where to find you, which suggests inside intelligence." Marcus felt Zix tense beside him, and he suddenly understood the political trap they were walking into. "You're suggesting that Zix provided them with information?" "I am suggesting that Vorthack exiles have been known to maintain contact with criminal organizations," Vexai replied smoothly. "A full investigation will be required." Marcus felt anger surge through him, but this time it was cold and calculating rather than hot and impulsive. "Administrator, I think you're forgetting something important." "Which is?" "I'm human," Marcus said simply. "And humans have a particular talent for recognizing when someone is trying to manipulate us." He moved to stand beside Zix, their armored forms making them look like a match set despite their size difference. "My partner just risked her life to protect this station and everyone on it. If that's not proof of her loyalty, then your investigation is going to have some serious credibility problems." Vexai's features shifted through several colors, indicating emotions Marcus couldn't interpret, but that were clearly not pleasant. "The investigation will proceed as planned." The communication ended, leaving Marcus and Zix alone in their destroyed quarters. Marcus began removing his armor, feeling every muscle in his body protesting. "Thank you," Zix said quietly. "For what?" "For standing with me, when you could have distanced yourself from a politically inconvenient partner," she replied. "Many species would have chosen the safer path." Marcus paused in removing his armor, looking at the small alien who had become so much more than just an assigned partner. "Zix, remember what you said about that compatibility rating? I think I finally understand what it really means." "What?" "It means we trust each other," Marcus said simply. "Not because some algorithm told us to, but because we've earned it." Zix was quiet for a long moment, her armor's systems powering down with soft harmonic tones. The partnership protocol traditionally concludes after one standard year. However, given the circumstances, early termination is possible if either party requests it. Marcus felt his heart skip a beat. Was she giving him an out? A way to avoid the political complications that were clearly coming? Are you asking me if I want to terminate the partnership? He asked carefully. I'm informing you that the option exists, Zix replied, not meeting his eyes. The investigation Vexheim mentioned will likely be quite difficult. Association with me may damage humanity's prospects within the cooperative. Marcus finished removing his armor and walked over to where Zix stood by their shattered window. Outside, repair crews were already working to fix the damage from the attack, beings of a dozen different species working together to restore their shared home. Zix, he said, gently touching her shoulder to get her attention. Do you want to terminate the partnership? She looked up at him, her large eyes reflecting the lights of the repair crews outside. No, she said quietly. But what I want may not be what is best for your species. Marcus smiled, feeling a warmth spread through his chest that had nothing to do with the armor's enhancement systems. Then, it's a good thing I get to make that choice for myself, isn't it? For the second time since they had met, Zix smiled. But this time, the expression reached her eyes, transforming her entire face with genuine joy. In that case, she said, I should probably warn you that the investigation is likely to be the least of our challenges. The Zephyrian attack was just the beginning. Marcus looked out at the vast expanse of space beyond the station, knowing that somewhere out there, forces were gathering that saw humanity as either a threat to be eliminated or a resource to be exploited. But he also knew that he wouldn't be facing those challenges alone. Bring it on, he said, echoing his words from several days earlier. I've got the best partner in the galaxy. Their communication panel chimed with yet another priority message, but this time, both Marcus and Zix were smiling as they moved to answer it. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The partnership protocol had been designed to test compatibility between species, but Marcus was beginning to understand that it had actually created something much more valuable, a bond that went beyond duty or assignment, beyond species or protocol. It had created a friendship that might just change the galaxy. Outside their window, the stars wheeled in their ancient patterns, indifferent to the small dramas of biological creatures. But in one small set of quarters on a trade station at the edge of known space, two beings from different worlds had found something that all the technology and algorithms in the cooperative couldn't create: trust, loyalty, and the unshakable conviction that some partnerships are worth fighting for. The real test was just beginning, but Marcus had never felt more ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. After all, he had learned the most important lesson the galaxy had to offer. Sometimes the best way to prove your worth isn't to stand alone, but to stand with someone who believes in you as much as you believe in them. The partnership protocol had succeeded beyond its creator's wildest imagination, creating not just understanding between species, but something far more powerful: hope for a future where differences became strengths, and where the bonds between individuals could bridge any gap the universe might place between them.